There is a very specific feeling when you pick up your morning coffee mug and realize you cannot entirely feel the ceramic against your fingers. It is not pain. It is a strange, dull buzzing, like you are wearing a very thin pair of gloves that you cannot take off. Most of us just shake our hands out, and we flex our fingers, tell ourselves we must have slept on our arm wrong, and go about our day. When you pass a certain age, it becomes incredibly easy to blame every new ache, every pop of a joint, and every strange sensation on the simple act of getting older. But if you have been noticing a persistent tingling, a burning, or a quiet numbness creeping into your hands or your feet, you cannot afford to brush it off as arthritis or aging. That tingling is not a normal part of getting older. It is a metabolic fire alarm ringing in the furthest corners of your body. I spent a good portion of my adult life working in community health education, standing in front of groups of working folks trying to translate complicated medical realities into plain English. The hardest part of that job was never explaining the science. The hardest part was convincing people to pay attention to the quiet warnings before the loud emergencies happened. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a neighborhood where men worked in manufacturing plants and factories. My father was one of them. The unwritten rule of his generation was that you ignored your body until it physically stopped you from working. He treated his health the same way he treated a company truck, driving it hard and ignoring the warning lights until the engine simply seized up. I watched him lose a good portion of his mobility to that exact stubbornness. I swore I would pay better attention to my own dashboard. But the tricky thing about blood sugar is that the warning lights do not always look the way you expect them to. A few years ago, I was sitting on my back porch here in Scottsdale trying to replace a small rusted screw on a screen door hinge. It was a simple job, the kind of thing I have done 1,000 times. But the screwdriver kept slipping out of my grip. My fingers felt clumsy, fuzzy, almost disconnected from my brain. I sat down in a patio chair and rubbed my hands together, waiting for the circulation to come back. That is when I realized it was not an isolated incident. I had been waking up with that same fuzzy feeling for weeks, assuming the mattress was getting too old or my sleeping posture was poor. That afternoon, I picked up the phone and called my daughter, Laura. She is a registered nurse over in Phoenix, and she spends 12 hours a day on a hospital floor, seeing exactly what happens when people ignore the small things. I told her about the screen door, expecting her to recommend a stretch or tell me to take an anti-inflammatory. Instead, she went quiet for a moment. Then she asked me exactly when I had my last blood work done, and specifically what my fasting glucose numbers were. I did not understand the connection at all. I thought we were talking about my hands, and she was asking about my sugar. But Laura explained the mechanics of it to me, and it fundamentally changed how I view the entire system of the human body. She told me to think of the nerves in my hands and feet like the delicate electrical wiring at the very end of a long circuit in a house. To keep those wires healthy and transmitting signals, they need a constant, clean supply of blood from tiny microscopic vessels. When your blood sugar stays elevated for long periods of time, that excess glucose does not just float around harmlessly. It becomes destructive. Laura described it as microscopic shards of glass traveling through your plumbing. Over time, that thick, sugary blood damages and scrapes the walls of those tiny vessels feeding your nerves. The blood supply starts to choke off. The insulation around the nerve endings begins to erode. And the very first place you feel that erosion is at the furthest points from your heart. Your toes and your fingers. The numbness, the tingling, that feeling of wearing invisible gloves, it is your nerve endings misfiring because they are literally starving for oxygen and dying. The medical term is neuropathy, but the practical term is a structural warning. It means the sugar in your bloodstream is actively breaking down the electrical system of your body. If you ignore a flickering light in your house long enough, eventually the circuit burns out completely. With your hands and feet, once that nerve dies, it does not come back. The numbness becomes permanent. The ability to button your own shirt, to hold a pen, or to feel the pedals of your car slips away. Hearing that laid out so plainly felt like a bucket of cold water. I realized that shaking my hands out every morning was like putting a piece of tape over the check engine light. I was addressing the symptom but completely ignoring the failing engine underneath. The body does not ask twice in the same way. It gives you a window, a grace period where the damage is just beginning, where the tingling is a warning rather than a permanent sentence. I did not wait for my annual checkup. I made an appointment that same week and specifically asked for a full blood panel focusing on the A1C, which shows the average blood sugar levels over several months. The numbers came back exactly as Laura suspected they might. They were creeping up into a danger zone I had been completely oblivious to. That realization forced me to stop treating my diet and my daily habits as suggestions and start treating them as the foundation of my independence. I had to make real mechanical changes to how I ate and how I moved, not to lose weight, but to save the wiring in my own hands. If you are sitting there rubbing your fingers together, or if you notice your feet burning when you lay down to sleep at night, do not let anyone tell you it is just a normal part of turning 70 or 80. Do not write it off. What you ignore today can absolutely limit you tomorrow. You need to pick up the phone, call your doctor, and demand to know exactly what your blood sugar is doing. You have to look at the numbers and confront them. We spend our whole lives using our hands to build things, to fix things, to provide for the people we care about. Losing that capacity because you did not want to ask a simple medical question is a tragedy that you have the power to avoid. The independence you want to protect for the rest of your life relies entirely on paying attention to the small alarms. You still have time to pull back from the edge and protect your foundation. Take care of your wiring, take care of yourself, and I will see you next time.